David, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for joining us. And all eyes are on how this new look Cavaliers team will perform. Do you think they're better suited with the way they've retooled this offseason than last year, or losing Kyrie can never really be overcome?
Well, look, he's a great offensive player, but it's the NBA, and there's only one guy that matters on that team, and he's still there. So as long as LeBron James is still there, they're the favorites in the East, and they added. I think they're deeper. I don't know if they're better, but I think they're certainly deeper. And if they can figure out a better way to defend than they did last year, they might have a better shot. The Golden State's still the prohibitive favorite to repeat, Damon. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the Cavaliers, like I think everybody else in the NBA, have basically said, look, we're going to put as many offensive players on the floor as we can and try to outscore you, because that's how the league is now. That's what the game is now. And that's the only way to beat Golden State. But you have to also get a few stops. And that's where I'm not sure the people they brought in are conducive to getting more stops. Jay Crowder will help in that area. But, whether Isaiah Thomas is there or not, he's not a great defensive player. Kevin Love is not as good a defensive player as Tristan Thompson is. So you're giving up defense for more offense. That will work against most teams. I'm not sure it works against Golden State.
When do you expect Isaiah Thomas to come back for the Cavs?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, they're saying January, I guess, still. So I don't think any of us know. I think it's going to – I don't know that he's ever going to be, at least this year, 100% coming off of that hip injury. My guess is he will find a happy medium where he can play with it. I don't know that he will find, complete range of motion and all that sort of thing this year. I think that's going to require another off season. But I think he will play. It's just a matter of whether that's before or after the All-Star break. They say it'll be before, and all we can do is wait. I mean, there's nothing you can do other than wait for him to wake up one day and say, okay, I'm ready to go.
David Aldridge, NBA on TNT and NBA TV, joins us here on the show. Take us behind the curtain of the NBA offices. We've had now kind of the stacking of some super teams, or at least some well-regarded teams with talent going and collecting in certain places. Does the NBA feel like, oh boy, it's still the Warriors than everybody else, and that's not a good thing? Or do they like having a kingpin that all of these other programs, all these other organizations are trying to collect talent for to shoot at the top?
Well, I can't speak for what Adam Silver and people in the NBA office specifically are thinking about it. I know that teams, what I like, Damon, this summer, I was worried, frankly, that especially in the Western Conference, that, seeing Golden State as dominant as they were last year, a lot of teams would just kind of throw up their hands and say, we can't compete. We're not going to try. We're just going to take our pounding for the next couple of years and wait for another day. But Houston didn't do that. Houston went all in immediately, got Chris Paul. Oklahoma City obviously went all in, got Carmelo and Paul George. Even whether it's for 1 year or 2 years, it doesn't matter. They didn't have to do it, and they went ahead and did it. Denver went out and got Paul Millsap. So the teams out west continue to try and get better, and that's what I was worried about personally. Going into this season, I think people are still competing. I think most people around the league, in terms of the teams, they all know Golden State's the best team. But there's a difference between knowing that and still trying to field as competitive a team as possible, and knowing that and just kind of giving up. And thankfully for, I think, the competitive fiber of the league, that didn't happen.
Oklahoma City has three guys that usually need the ball in their hands. Russell Westbrook, Paul George, now Carmelo Anthony. I don't know if there's enough shots to go around, but maybe there is, and maybe this thing works. Do you think it works in OKC?
I'm a little skeptical, to be honest with you, just because of the fact that even if they play small with Carmelo at the 4, boy, that's three guys that are used to pounding the ball. And I don't say that in a bad way. That's just, some guys can play without the ball, and some guys need the ball. And these are three guys that have consistently kind of needed the ball in their hands to be at their best. somebody will have to take a back seat and say, okay, I won't shoot as much. You would think that would be Westbrook. Maybe it will be. Maybe he takes 6 or 8 fewer shots this year than normal, and becomes a distributor. But frankly, I think that's not the best Russell Westbrook. The best Russell Westbrook is attacking, getting to the front of the rim, converting through contact, and going to the foul line a lot. Carmelo could at this point of his career. His catch and shoot numbers last year are actually pretty good. So he's not bad at it. He could do it. The question is, will he feel comfortable doing it? Will he feel comfortable deferring in the last 2 minutes of a game to get Paul George shots or get Russell Westbrook shots? Again, against most teams on most nights, it's not going to matter. But when you play elite teams that know how to guard people, that's when you see the rubber hitting the road on a lot of these things.
The Timberwolves have a good young nucleus, and now they add Jimmy Butler. They're looking to take that next step. Do you think they're good enough in a stacked Western Conference to be a top 5 seed in the West?
No, they're not a top 5 seed. I don't think. No. I think they can make the playoffs. But no, they're not a top 5 seed. I mean, look, Houston, Oklahoma City, Golden State, those are 3 locks. San Antonio's 4. And then you're saying, is Minnesota, can they beat out Portland and some Memphis and some of the other teams out west to get that 5 seed? I don't think so. Not quite yet. But I do think they have a great shot at making the playoffs and probably will make the playoffs. They're an up-and-coming team, and Jimmy will help them in a lot of areas, especially defensively. I think he'll be a good leader on that team. I think Jeff Teague is kind of an overlooked addition to that team who also will help them, I think, in a lot of areas. But there's still a jump that needs to be made. And it's hard out west because, if they're in the East, then, I think they definitely are a top 5 seed. But out west, it's tough to beat teams that know how to win. And those are a lot of teams. Even the Clippers, they're a different team without Chris Paul, obviously. But you still got a lot of guys that have had good seasons the last few years. And they're not going to just automatically drop because Chris Paul's going to be gone. It won't be as good, but they're not going to drop. So I think probably a year out for Minnesota to really make that move into the top 5, but I do certainly think they can make the playoffs.
David Aldridge, NBA on TNT, joins us as we get set for the start of the season. In Cleveland, there's obviously this question mark about what happens after the season. Do you think there's any risk that this Cavs season does derail because there's so much of what will LeBron do in the summer? No,
because it's a veteran team. That's not, it's not a group of kids that don't know how to handle that. Dwayne Wade was right in the middle of all the madness in Miami those 4 years that LeBron was there. Certainly Derrick Rose is a veteran, knows what's going on. No, they can handle that. And I don't think, if I thought for 1 second that LeBron wasn't fully engaged, I might agree with you, but I think he's even more determined this year to prove that he's still the top dog because there's a lot of question about whether the Cavs can win this year. And I think he's a guy that feeds off of that type of motivation. So they'll be fine. And again, I don't, as much as I like Boston, and I think they're going to be a very good team. Ultimately, they've got 11 new players on that team. That's going to take a while for that all to get together and work. And so while I still think by the end of the year they're going to be the second best team in the East, by that time I think Cleveland's going to pretty much have salted away home court. And I still think Cleveland's the best team in the East despite all the movement and player change that they've had.
The Sixers made a lot of news when they signed Joel Embiid to a 5-year, $146 million extension. Now, it looks like there is a clause in there that protects them against some injuries, and that's the big risk here. But how risky is giving Embiid all of this money right now?
Well, it's a big risk. I mean, obviously, it's a big risk. This is a guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy since he's been in the NBA. So it's a big risk. Having said that, I don't know what choice they had. You can't let this guy become a restricted free agent and then run the risk of him signing a 1-year deal and then being unrestricted in 2019 when, half the NBA would try to get this guy. I mean, that's just the reality of there's not a whole lot of talented big men in this league, and he showed last year when he was on the floor that he is not just talented. He is a game-changing talent. I mean, he can win games for you with his talent. So, you know, it's a risk, it's a gamble, but again, what choice did they have? He is the linchpin to that team's success going forward. The chance that they have to become a really good NBA team capable of going deep in the playoffs rests on Joel Embiid being center for them for a long time. And so they had to do it. And, you know, there are a lot of cautionary tales about people giving contracts to injured players that blew up on them. But and talent is at a premium in the NBA more so than in any other sport. And so when you have talent, you got to keep it. You just have to. You can't let talent walk out the door. And so they had to do it.
TNT's got exclusive coverage of NBA's opening night on Tuesday, featuring a blockbuster doubleheader: Celtics at Cavs, Rockets at Warriors. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. NBA TV tips off 106 regular season games, which is awesome. Saturday, October the 21st, Warriors, Grizzlies at 8, Clippers, Suns at 10:30. David Aldridge all over it. Of course, you can always follow him on Twitter as well, at DAldridgeTNT. David, it's great to catch up, man. Thanks so much. Enjoy the start of the season.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. David Aldridge joining us this morning here on The DA Show.